Joseph knocked on the door. Joseph knocked on the door, and the car was not repaired, and there would be another night, and Joseph did not shave, and each little hair was perfect on his chin, and the magazine shops were closed, and there were no more magazines, and they ate supper a little bit anyway for her, and he went out in the evening to walk in the town. She sat once more in a chair, and the slow erections of hair rose as if a magnet were passed over her neck. She was very weak and could not move from the chair, and she had no body and was only a heartbeat, a huge pulsation of warmth and ache between four walls of the room. Her eyes were hot and pregnant, swollen with child of terror behind the bellied, taunted lids. Deeply inside herself, she felt the first little cog slip. Another night, another night, another night, she thought, and this will be longer than the last. The first little cog slipped. The pendulum missed a stroke, followed by the second and third interrelated cogs. The cogs interlocked, a small with a little larger one, the little larger one with a bit larger one, the bit larger one with a large one, the large one with a huge one, the huge one with an immense one, the immense one with a titanic one. A red ganglion, no bigger than a scarlet thread, slipped and quivered. A nerve no greater than a red linen fiber twisted. Deep in her one little mech was gone, and the entire machine imbalance was about to steadily shake itself to bits. She didn't fight it. She let it quake and terrorize her and knock the sweat off her brow and jolt down her spine and flood her mouth with horrible wine. She felt as if a broken gyro, tilted now this way, now that, and blundered and trembled and whined in her. The color from her face, like light leaving a clicked-off bulb, the crystal cheeks of the bulb vessel showing veins and filaments all colorless. Joseph was in the room. He had come in, but she didn't even hear him. He was in the room, but it made no difference. He changed nothing with his coming. He was getting ready for bed and said nothing as he moved about, and she said nothing, but fell into bed while he moved around in a smoke-filled space beyond her, and once he spoke, but she didn't hear him. She timed it. Every 5 minutes she looked at her watch, and the watch shook, and time shook, and the 5 fingers were 15 moving, reassembling into 5. The shaking never stopped. She called for water. She turned and turned upon the bed. The wind blew outside, cocking the lights and spilling bursts of illumination that hit buildings, glancing sidelong blows, causing windows to glitter like opened eyes and shut swiftly as the light tilted in yet another direction. Downstairs, all was quiet. After the dinner, no sounds came up into their silent rooms. He handed her a water glass. "I'm cold, Joseph," she said, lying deep in folds of cover. "You're all right," he said. "No, I'm not. I'm not well. I'm afraid." "There's nothing to be afraid of." "I want to get on the train for the United States." "There's a train for Lyon, but none. There's a train in Lyon, but none here," he said, lighting a new cigarette. "Let's drive there." "In these taxis with these drivers and leave our car here?" "Yes, I want to go. You'll be all right in the morning." "I know I won't be. I'm not well," he said. "It would cost hundreds of dollars to have the car shipped home." "I don't care. I have $200 in the bank home." "I'll pay for it, but please, let's go home." "When the sun shines tomorrow, you'll feel better. It's just that the sun's gone now." "Yes, the sun's gone and the wind's blowing," she whispered, closing her eyes, turning her head, listening. "Oh, what a lonely wind. Mexico's a strange land. All the jungles and deserts and lonely stretches, and here and there a little town like this with a few lights burning, and you could put out with a snap of your fingers. It's a pretty big country," he said. "Don't these people ever get lonely?" "They're used to it this way." "Don't they get afraid then?" "They have a religion for that." "I wish I had a religion." "The minute you get a religion, you stop thinking," he said. "Believe in one thing too much and you have no room for new ideas." "Tonight," she said faintly, "I'd like nothing more than to have no more room for new ideas, to stop thinking, to believe in one thing so much it leaves me no time to be afraid." "Oh, you're not afraid," he said. "If I had a religion," she said, ignoring him, "I'd have a lever with which to lift myself, but I haven't a lever now, and I don't know how to lift myself." "Oh, for God's," he mumbled to himself, sitting down. I used to have a religion, she said. Baptist. No, that was when I was 12. I got over that. I mean, later. You never told me. You should have known, she said. What religion? Plaster saints in the sanctuary? Any special saint you like to tell your beads to? Yes. And did he answer your prayers? For a little while. Lately, no, never. Never any more, not for years now, but I keep praying. Which saint is this? Saint Joseph. Saint Joseph! He got up, poured himself a glass of water from the glass pitcher, and it was a lonely, trickling sound in the room. My name. Coincidence, she said. They looked at one another for a few moments. He looked away. Plaster saints, he said, drinking the water down. After a while, she said, Joseph, he said. Yes. And she said, come hold my hand, will you? Women, he sighed. He came and held her hand. After a minute, she drew her hand away, hid it under the blanket, leaving his hand empty behind. With her eyes closed, she trembled the words, Never mind, it's not as nice as I can imagine it. It's really nice the way I can make you hold my hand in my mind. Gods, he said, and went into the bathroom. She turned off the light. Only the small crack of light under the bathroom door showed. She listened to her heart. It beat 150 times a minute steadily, and the little whirring tremor that was still in her marrow, as if each bone of her body had a blue-bottle fly imprisoned in it, hovering, buzzing, shaking, quivering, deep, 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 her eyes reversed into herself, to watch the secret heart of herself pounding itself to pieces against the side of her chest. Water ran in the bathroom. She heard him washing his teeth. Joseph? Yes, he said behind the shut door. Come here. What do you want? I want you to promise me something, please. Oh, please, what is it? Open the door first. What is it? He demanded behind the closed door. Promise me, she said, and stopped. Promise you what? He asked after a long pause. Promise me, she said, and couldn't go on. She lay there. He said nothing. He heard the watch, she heard the watch and her heart pounding together. A lantern creaked on the hotel exterior. Promise me, if anything happens, she heard herself say, muffled and paralyzed, as if she were one of the surrounding hills, talking at him from the distance. If anything happens to me, you won't let me be buried here in the graveyard, over those terrible catacombs. Don't be foolish, she said behind the door. Promise me, she said, eyes wide in the dark. Of all the foolish things to talk about. Promise, please promise. You'll be all right in the morning, he said. Promise so I can sleep. I can sleep. If only you'd say you wouldn't let me be put there. I don't want to be put there. Honestly, he said out of patience. Please, she said. Why would I promise anything so ridiculous, he said. You'll be fine tomorrow, and besides, if you died, you'd look very pretty in the catacomb, standing between Mr. Grimace and Mr. Gape, with a spring of morning glory in your hair. Yet he laughed, sincerely. Silence. She lay there in the dark. Don't you think you'll look pretty there? He asked laughingly behind the door. She said nothing in the dark room. Don't you? He said. Somebody walked down below in the plaza, faintly fading away. Eh? He asked her, brushing his teeth. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, her breast rising and falling, faster, 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 the air going in and out of her nostrils, a little trickle of blood coming from her clenched lips. Her eyes were very wide, her hands blindly constricted the bedclothes. Eh? He said from behind the door. She said nothing. Sure, he talked to himself. Pretty as hell, he murmured under the flow of the tap water. He rinsed his mouth. Sure, he said. Nothing from her in the bed. Women are funny, he said to himself in the mirror. She lay in the bed. Sure, he said. He gargled with some antiseptic, spat it down the drain. You'll be all right in the morning, he said. Not a word from her. We'll get the car fixed. She didn't say anything. Be morning before you know it, he said. He was screwing caps on things now, putting freshener on his face. And the car fixed tomorrow, maybe at the very latest the next day. You won't mind another night here, will you? She didn't answer. Will you? He asked. No reply. The light blinked out under the bathroom door. Marie? He opened the door. Asleep? She lay, eyes wide open, breasts moving up and down. Asleep, he said. Well, good night, lady. He climbed into his bed. Tired, he said. No reply. Tired, he said. The wind tossed the lights outside. The room was oblong and black, and he was in his bed, dozing already. She lay wide. She lay, eyes wide, the watch ticking on her wrists, breast moving up and down. It was a fine day coming through the Tropic of Cancer. The automobile pushed along the turning road, leaving the jungle country behind, heading for the United States, roaring between the green hills, taking every turn, leaving behind a faint vanishing trail of exhaust smoke, and inside the shiny automobile sat Joseph with his pink, healthy face and his Panama hat, and a little camera cradled in his lap as he drove, a swath of blue silk pinned around the left upper arm of his tan coat. He watched the country slide by and absent-mindedly made a gesture to the seat beside him and stopped. He broke into a little sheepish smile and turned once more to the window of his car, humming a tuneless tune, his right hand slowly reaching over to touch the seat beside him, which was empty. The end.